Yo, what's up, guys? It's Parnellyx, and in this video, we're doing a little bit of a thought exercise, a little experiment here. This is definitely not like the reality things. I'm not like suggesting that Warwick's getting changed. This is just my like opinion of how I think Riot should change Warwick. So basically, the thought exercise is if Riot Games gave me the position, gave me the authority to make changes to Warwick for one patch. I could do whatever I want to change Warwick, but it's got to be over the course of one patch. What would I do? That's basically the goal here. How can I improve Warwick in one patch? What's everything that I could throw in there right now? And I'm actually going to take two different directions to this. I'm going to take like a more realistic approach, and I'm also going to take a little bit more of a more fun approach with like a mini rework, like a mid-scope update. And yeah, I just want to talk about changes that I think could make Warwick a much more balanced champion, a more viable champion at higher ranks, but also still viable at lower ranks, fun, fluid, and smooth. I think there's just like, I think Warwick, obviously, I'm a big fan of him as a champion, but there's a lot of problems with him. And I think that he's just held back in so many new ways, but he has a lot of potential. So yeah, I just think that's, there's a lot of things that could be changed about Warwick to make him really good. So I just want to express how I think I could make Warwick the best champion he could be, to really bring out his identity and make him a unique, fun champion that everyone loves. So let me know in the comments what you guys think, what your ideas are, and also let me know what you think about my ideas. I'd like to see some discussion about this. So anyways, let's just go straight into it. So you can see right here from the key, green equals buff, orange equals nerfs, orange equals nerf, pink equals quality of life changes, or usually buffs and bug fixes, and then cyan equals new. And keep in mind, I am trying to make everything balanced. I'm trying to make everything balanced. I'm not trying to like throw in like, you know, Warwick just one-shots everything. That's not very realistic, and it's not very fun. And I actually want this video to be taken kind of seriously. Like I really actually put a lot of like actual thought into this, and it was not messing around. This is actually how I'd change Warwick if I had the ability right now. So, and I'll go through every single change and explain my thought process. Okay, so first things first, movement speed. 335 to 340. Warwick's base movement speed is the lowest among all melee champions in the game, minus like, you know, dismounted Kled. So this is a big problem because Warwick has no really tools to work with in combat, and so as far as mobility is concerned. Riven has 340 movement speed. Talia has 340 movement speed. Plenty of mages actually have 340 movement speed. And Warwick, just for some reason, has a really low base movement speed, which actually allows him to be kited quite a bit. And it doesn't really make sense for a champion that's very auto-attack based like Warwick. And again, doesn't have any like mobility tools or dashes in team fights. So this is just like a change that really just needs to happen, in my opinion, because it really is just awkward and weird. And there's going to be compensation in the W a little bit later, but we'll get into that. Next change would be to increase his tankiness via base HP and armor. Warwick right now is very, he's very like susceptible to bursts early. And like actually another change I could probably throw in here is they could probably like nerf his passive healing early on, but make it scale a little bit better. Because right now, like Warwick's like healing is very, and his passive is really, really strong early. Everyone knows that. That's why he's really, really good in lane. But it also just doesn't scale very well in team fights. And I think that's the issue there is that just like top lane Warwick becomes very cheesy. And I know Riot doesn't really like how cheesy top lane Warwick is. Most of the player base doesn't really like how cheesy Warwick top lane is. I think it is kind of toxic. I think that Warwick could be a good top laner without being so cheesy. And so I think that they can nerf his healing a little bit in the early game and then make it up later on. And but yeah, because he has so much healing in his kit in the early game, Riot's made him pretty squishy in the early game. He's not the squishiest champion, but he's still pretty squishy considering he has no mobility tools and ways of really getting on you or range. And what this means is like when you're playing jungle Warwick and you're ganking bot lane, you basically just get one shot before you can ever touch anyone. So that's like a big problem, and I think it really holds him back. Next change would be AP ratio on his passive, 10% to 20%. You could obviously put an AP ratio, or you could buff his AP ratio on his Q, but I don't think that's like, I think this change would be more versatile. If you're trying to, you know, make a change that's a little bit more fun and open up Warwick's build, you know, versatility, AP ratio on his passive being increased would really help with that. It would help with your burst. If you're trying to play like AP one-shot Warwick, it would definitely help there. But it'd also help with DPS for like DPS off-tank bruiser builds for like AP Warwick. So I think that this build just, would be fun. It's not necessary, obviously, because AP Warwick's not very strong right now. But I think like if you're going to buff AP Warwick, you'd like to buff his AP ratio and his passive, because that just opens up his builds a little bit more. And I don't know. I think it'll be a better avenue to making AP Warwick viable. Because AP like one-shot Warwick with like just walking up and pressing Q and one-shotting someone, like you'd have to like really buff up Warwick's Q ratio, and it would just be kind of cheesy and weird. Even though I'm definitely down for it, but it'd just be kind of weird. Okay, so moving on to Warwick's Q here. Let's get into bug fixes and stuff. So first bug fix, can no longer follow recall to fountain. Pretty self-explanatory. That bug's been around for about a year now, and it's pretty annoying. Second bug fix, Q tap hold now works as intended. So this is a little bit, this is very broad, but basically, I think everyone's experienced where you try to like just tap Q on someone and you end up doing Q hold, and you didn't really mean to. Or you try to tap Q, or you try to hold Q on someone and you end up not following them. You only do Q tap. And I don't really know why this works, what makes that happen, but it definitely happens sometimes. So I'd like that to be fixed. Kind of on a similar note, there's a quality of life change I'd like to be made where Warwick's Q hold can now be buffered. So as it stands on live, this is like an unspoken, like it's not anything I've ever really talked about, but it's like a big complaint I have, which is that that makes Warwick feel not very smooth, and it really limits his outplay potential. So like if you're like out of range sometimes, or you just like use like your ult spin or something like that, sometimes you can't just hold Q and follow them. A lot of times, like you have to click the ground first, right click the ground first, and then get in range and Q them. Or something like that. I don't exactly know how it works. I think you just have to like be in range of Q in order to use Q hold. And so that's why I worded it this way. But I'm pretty sure like if you try to Q hold outside of Q range, you just end up doing Q tap, and it really is awkward and is just not good. So anyways, like I said, I want to make this very balanced. I want to make these changes a little bit more serious. So because I'm going to do a lot of bug fixes, quality of life changes, and even some buffs thrown in there, I gotta cut some power out somewhere. And I think one area that makes sense would be nerfing his Q cooldown at early ranks. Reasons of being, it would definitely like nerf his clear speed a little bit, but that's gonna be made up for later. And it would also nerf, Warwick's lane bully potential in lane. And I think Riot would like to head that direction. But it would also give Warwick an incentive to really put points in his Q. Because as it stands right now, you just max W and E on Warwick. Maybe you put like 3 points in Q or something like that, but you don't max it out fully because all you get is a little bit extra healing and not really much else. And I feel like, with Warwick, his Q is such a big part of his kit that it just feels more natural to put points in his Q, right? So I think giving him an incentive to max his Q second or even first would be ideal. Another change to his Q would be to give him a 20% more on his AD ratio on his Q. So this would bring it to 140%. And the reason being is because Warwick lost lost a lot of burst damage during the season 11 item changes because Tiamat active is no more. So the Tiamat burst damage on the active with your Q Tiamat combo was really, really big for Warwick because Warwick's damage is very like reliant on getting targets below half health to deal much damage to them. You need to burst them below half health or somehow find a way to get them below half health to deal any DPS to them. So considering that we don't have the Tiamat active anymore, like Warwick's damage is really kind of struggling. Like if you can't burst targets really, really hard and build like a lot of AD or like open up AD builds, then it can be kind of awkward. So I think this really opens up a lot of builds and it really fixes a big problem that he has right now, which is not dealing enough damage to targets. to the point where he just can't have any kill pressure on people sometimes. Okay, moving on to his W. Quality of life change on his W can now be used in combats. I don't know why he can't use his W in combats. I also threw in that you could also use it during Q. So imagine you Q hold. You're holding Q on someone and you're dashing through them. You can probably like press W while you're doing that, and then you get the mark on them. Obviously, like the movement speed would be out of combat, but the attack speed still applies on the mark. So like that would actually that'd be a pretty big thing, you know, that you could be able to do. It makes it kind of awkward when trying to take fights with people because you can't use your W in combat. So you have to try to like hide in a bush, press W, and then approach him. Bug fix would be to, you know, of course, make his attack speed function normally. This is just a known bug on Warwick, but it's very clunky, very weird. And even though there are ways around it, I do know how to. I mentioned in my mechanics video that there's ways to make Warwick's attack speed consistent. It's still just not like satisfying. I'd rather it just work normally, right? So that's what I was thinking. Another quality of life change would be the juggling mechanic, which I've talked about before on this channel. Maybe optimizing it to make it more easy and reliable to use. That way there's some form of skill expression in terms of Warwick's clear speed. They don't have to do this. This is definitely the most optional change on this. I just kind of wanted to throw it out as an idea. Another quality of life change that I would really like actually would be that dots no longer delay the W movement speed for longer than 2 seconds. You know, if you get hit by like Malzahari or something like that and he has Landry's, you basically don't get out of combat movement speed for like 10 seconds because you're constantly ticking, and you never really get out of combat. And I think that's like a huge problem versus some champions, and it's also a problem when you're going something like Death's Dance. So that'd be a really nice change. So yeah, as far as more nerfs coming Warwick's way, you know, to make room for more power, would be to just nerf every aspect of his W, nerf his bonus attack speed a little bit, nerf his bonus movement speed a little bit. And you gotta keep in mind these bonuses do get tripled, so these nerfs would definitely be pretty significant. But I think his W just has a lot of his stats are really thrown into his W. Like I mentioned, a lot of his damage is very reliant on getting targets below half health because he has so many stats just kind of just stuffed into his W. And the problem with that is that his W is inconsistent and unreliable, and you can't really always decide when targets are below half health, right? So again, you don't have like tools to burst targets really hard. So yeah, I think that's, you know, making him less reliant on blood trails, while also still making it, you know, be strong and satisfying would be a good thing. Okay, moving on to his E. Fear no longer locks out Warwick for 0.5 seconds. So right now, when you use your E1 and then you use your E2, which is the fear, you cancel your auto attacks, you just disarm yourself for half a second, and you basically silence yourself for half a second. The only thing you can do is press Q, but you can't do anything else. And this is just really awkward. Like it can delay your ultimates. Obviously it can cancel your auto attacks, and it just doesn't make any sense. Like, you know, for an auto attack based champion, you figure, you know, after you fear your target, that's when you want to just start attacking them and shredding them. You know, Jax doesn't get his auto attacks canceled. He doesn't disarm himself when he stuns his targets. He's allowed to wail on them. Warwick can't do that. And that is just weird. And I assume that's a bug. I assume that's not like a quality. I assume that wasn't intended. I have no idea why that's in the game, but that's just how things are. Okay, another nerf to throw in for Warwick would be to nerf his damage reduction on his E. Again, I think this should be probably more of like a 1.1 durability. It shouldn't be something you max second or first. But as it stands, it's just really OP in team fights. And I think there's definitely room to nerf this ability, because even though it's probably not as good as Jax's Counter-Strike, I mean, Jax's Counter-Strike is one of the best abilities in the game, and Warwick's E is actually probably also one of the best abilities in the game, just because of how tanky it makes you in team fights. So I think it'd be reasonable to nerf it a little bit, but still, you know, providing some value. My big change, I would say, with my big idea here would be to find a way to improve Warwick's clear speed. And obviously you could put damage on Warwick's E, but my idea is a little bit different, more creative, I guess. That's the approach I'm trying to take, at least, and also to be more on theme. And that is to make Warwick's E fear minions and monsters. Well, it obviously fears minions and monsters, but when you fear them, you mark them with your W for 4 seconds. So this would give Warwick, this does a couple things. So first of all, obviously it increases Warwick's clear speed. It gives you some creativity in terms of how you can clear a little bit faster. Like there's some skill expression. It's not just simple damage. You actually have to auto attack correctly, right? But also it gives Warwick a reason to press E in the jungle, because as it stands right now, you just don't use your E in the jungle. There's no point because you heal up all the damage that you'd reduce anyways. So it's just kind of a wasted ability and it's kind of weird. And I think that giving Warwick a reason to use E in the jungle to increase his clear speed, allowing him to walk up to Gromp, press E and Gromp, attack it really fast, and then get it below half health and keep attacking it fast. I think that would be a cool way of, just giving him tools to clear a bit faster. And I think it's more on theme because it sticks with that. Not only does it, apply his W mark, but it also keeps him auto attacking. He's supposed to be an auto attack based champion. So increasing his clear speed via auto attacking as opposed to casting spells, I think makes sense. Okay, so as far as our changes are concerned, quality of life change would be obviously his hitbox not starting behind you and just like hitting everything around him at the start of the cast. That's always very awkward. Warwick's R is very thin. Everyone knows it's a very thin and actually kind of hard to hit ability, except for at the beginning of the cast. So whenever you're trying to run away, it always is going to hit whoever's nearby. And that is just weird and inconsistent and just feels kind of pointless, not going to lie. Another bug fix would be to make it so that Warwick's ults now cancels when his target uses QSS, or in GP's case, uses his orange, as opposed to locking him for the full duration. So if you ult someone and they have QSS and they use QSS, they break away, they stop taking damage, you stop healing. They also stop, obviously aren't being CC'd anymore. And that's like how it should work, right? But the problem is you keep channeling and you just basically stun yourself. So if you ult someone with QSS, you stun yourself or you suppress yourself in full duration. And that's just obviously not supposed to work that way and really, really weird. The next quality of life change is the most important one. This is by far the most important one. I'll take this single quality of life change over like everything else bundled together. And that is to make it so that Warwick's ultimate no longer can be canceled by the suppressed target. So for example, you can really just think of any example in the game. There's so many. Like any champion that has hard CC that can cancel your ultimate can cancel your ultimate while being suppressed. And it really just comes down to like abilities being buffered. So for example, you ult Syndra, she presses E right before your ultimate lands, and your ultimate lands, starts suppressing her, but then her E goes off because of the delay, and then you just get your ult canceled. And there's so many reasons why this is bad. I mean, it's inconsistent. Like Malzahar doesn't, obviously doesn't have to deal with this problem as much because he's range, plus he has his spell shield. And Warwick already just has so much counterplay to it. Like his ultimate can still get canceled by, nearby enemies. It's still a skill shot you have to land. It still puts you in danger. Like that's one of the issues here is if this bug happens, or this is not really a bug, but like if this like issue happens where your ultimate gets instantly canceled, it just like actually screws you so hard. You just die a lot of times, or you just really just lose a team fight. So it's a huge problem. It really makes Warwick's ultimates like really, really unreliable and a mess right now. It's really, really hard to like predict too. You just kind of have to like hope they don't accidentally panic, press their CC ability and cancel your ultimate. And that's just not how it should be. Like Warwick's ultimate should be an ultimate ability. It should function like a normal ability. It should function how it's supposed to work. And there's no reason why, like this is very obviously not going to make Warwick's ultimate OP. If you're suppressing a target, they shouldn't be able to cancel your ultimate. I think that's fair. I think that's very, very fair. Very, very fair. And then just throwing in another minor nerf here would be to nerf his base damage and his ultimate a little bit, just in case maybe maybe these changes make Warwick too OP. Obviously not like a big change here, but keep in mind he also heals this damage as well. But yeah, I'm just trying to be safe here. I want to make sure that it's fair. I want to make sure these changes are fair and realistic. So that's why I'm throwing in a little extra nerf here. But that is like, I think these are all pretty realistic changes that could be accomplished. Now let's move on to my second version, which is a bit more creative. And this would be more of a mid-scope update. So most of these changes are going to stick. And as you can see here, I threw in another red highlights in the key to indicate that there's changes that have been made. So a couple changes here. First things first, E. This attack speed bonus right here. Fearing enemies now marks enemies with blood trail for 4 seconds. This would be removed. This would be removed in this version. So you no longer have this clear speed increase with your E. Also, Warwick's Q cooldown, I would reduce it by probably 1 second at all ranks. Well, it'd still scale down. It'd still be like higher at level 1, but it'd scale down to 5 seconds instead. And this is a little bit more optional, but I think there's room for this to occur, and you'll see here in a second why. Wait, there's something else I think I changed, wasn't there? Oh yeah, AD ratio. AD ratio, I didn't increase the AD ratio. Didn't do that anymore. No AD ratio increase. So the big change here would be to give Warwick's Q a new mechanic, a charge system. So now Warwick is going to have a secondary bar, something like I don't know. You know, he's got a secondary resource as opposed to just his mana bar. And what's going to happen is I'll call it Shimmer, just to keep it on theme with Arcane. Could be anything. Could call it Fury, Rage, something like that. Agony. But I think Shimmer is pretty cool, and obviously, you know, is pretty on theme. And basically, Warwick could have a non-empowered Q, and it would still deal like 120% of his AD plus 90% of his AP, as opposed to 100% of his AP in damage. But it would no longer heal, and it would no longer deal max health damage. So his Q would be heavily nerfed. However, auto-attacking units would grant you a stack of Shimmer. And this could be, max stacks of Shimmer would probably be like something like 10. And these stacks could be doubled versus champions, or maybe when you're low. I'm not exactly sure which would be a better option, but those are just two approaches you could take. So you don't want every Q to be an empowered Q, but you definitely want probably like half of your Qs to be empowered Qs. I think that'd be kind of fine, as long as you're auto-attacking targets, at least. Not just walking around and just waiting for your Q cooldown to come up. And then at max stacks of Shimmer, you empower your next Q to deal 16 to 24% of the target's current health and damage. I say current health because I think this would give him really good tools for dealing with tankier champions, which he just cannot deal with tankier champions right now. Warwick struggles big time versus tankier champions, big time. And again, with TMI active being gone, Warwick lacks burst in general against most targets to bring them below half health, and this would just synergize really well with his W. You Q targets when they're full health, and you're able to chunk them really hard and get them below half health so you can get your attack speed going. I think that would be a really cool change. It wouldn't deal any extra damage. The empowered Q wouldn't do that much against targets that are really low HP. So it's not always going to be like an OP damage Q, but it really helps deal with that issue that Warwick has. And then on top of this, Warwick gets his heal back, and he heals for 50% to 90% of the total damage dealt. And granted, if he is, queuing a full health targets with his empowered Q, he'd be healing even more. But that's not all. But that is not all. Half of the damage also dealt as AoE damage. So you get like a super TMI effect. You get like a super big burst of AoE damage, and this would be the way of helping his clear speed or his wave clear in lane. So I think this would be a really fun way. This would make Warwick's Q feel pretty satisfying. His basic Q would still the reason why I want his Q to be a little bit lower is because it would still give him tools to outplay people with his Q, to avoid CC, like knockups, displacements. He would also have the ability to follow flashes and keep up with like other champions' mobility, follow dashes and jumps and stuff like that. So it would make his basic Q, more of a utility spell as opposed to a trading spell. But if you get when you get the empowered Q, then obviously it's just like a really insane tool for bursting and healing, and it does a little bit more of everything. But I think it would make Warwick's Q more fun and satisfying, and give him more like outplay potential and just more tools to work with. So yeah, those are the changes I thought of with Warwick. Just wanted to throw that out there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thanks for watching. Peace out.